This is college algebra, section 6.3. We are talking about quadratic equations. We want to be able to use the quadratic formula as well as factor to solve quadratics and also graph them in order to model data. So usually the graph of a quadratic looks like a parabola, and parabolas have a vertex. The vertex of a quadratic in standard form, y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, occurs when the x-coordinate of the vertex is equal to negative b over 2a. All right. Also keep in mind that the vertex of a quadratic will be either the minimum or maximum of the parabola. All right, so now we have to find the vertex of the graph of 4x squared plus 6x minus 8. This is a few-step process. The first one would be to find a, b, and c. Those are the coefficients of the x squared, the x, and the constant. In this case, a is going to be 4, b is going to be 6, and c is going to be negative 8. Be sure to include the sign in your coefficient. The next step is going to be calculate the x-coordinate of the vertex. In this case, it's going to be negative 6 over 2 times 4, and that's going to be negative 6 over 8, which reduces to negative 3/4. The third step is to plug x vertex into the function to find the y-coordinate of the vertex. So that negative 3/4 is going to go in for the x, and we're going to write parentheses negative 3/4 squared plus 6 times negative 3/4 minus 8. And we go through all that process, and we should get an answer of negative 10 and 1/4. So the vertex of this parabola is given by the coordinate point negative 3/4 comma negative 10 and 1/4. And that's very important information when it comes to graphing a parabola. Here is another problem. I encourage you to pause the video and try this on your own and come up with the vertex of the graph. Okay, so first I have to find the coordinate, x-coordinate of the vertex. And that's going to be given by negative 4, because the b is negative 4, and the a is 2, over 2 times 2. And that should come out to be positive 4 over 4, which is just 1. Then the y-coordinate of the vertex will be given by 2 times 1 squared minus 4 times 1 plus 5. And that is equal to 2 minus 4 plus 5, which is 3. My vertex is going to be 1, 3. Once we have a vertex, the next step is going to be to find the x-intercepts. And the solution or solutions to the quadratic equation ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 are given by x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. That is our next formula to remember. Note that these are the x-intercepts in a typical graph of a parabola, because we are setting y equal to 0. So solve the quadratic. 0 equals x squared minus 3x minus 4. I'm going to use the quadratic equation, and I'm going to identify again the a is 1, b is negative 3, and the c is negative 4. And I'm going to plug that into the quadratic formula. Negative 3 plus or minus square root of negative 3 squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c is negative 4, divided by 2 times 1. Next step, this becomes a positive, so 3 plus or minus square root. Now negative 3 squared is positive 9. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4, times another negative 4 is going to be positive 16 over 2. And this is actually going to come out really nicely. It's going to be 3 plus or minus root 25 over 2. The square root of 25 is just 5. And then I'm going to get two different answers for x. The first one is x is going to be 3 plus 5 over 2. That's the positive side. And the next one is going to be x equals 3 minus 5 over 2. And I get x is equal to 8 divided by 2, which is 4. And I get x is equal to negative 2 over 2, which is negative 1. Now keep in mind, it's not a coordinate point. 4, 1 is not a coordinate. It really corresponds to the intercepts. So 1 is going to be 4, 0, and the other is going to be negative 1, 0. So the x's are the solution to the quadratic equation, and there are coordinate points that represent x-intercepts. Let's do another. This time, I am going to factor. This is another method besides the quadratic formula. And in order to do this when you have a number in front of the x squared, I am going to multiply the first number and the last number. And I'm going to write negative 15. And then I need factors of 15 that add together to negative 2. Next step is to list factors. 1 times 15, 3 times 5. And it looks like 3 and 5 can get me a 2. That will occur if I make the 5 negative and the 3 positive. After that, I want to rewrite this negative 2x as 3x minus 5x and keep the original rest of the function. And then I can factor by grouping. The first two terms have a 3x in common. So if I factor out a 3x, this can be written as 3x times the quantity x plus 1. Ideally, I need an x plus 1 somewhere in the negative 5x minus 5. And that will occur if I decide to factor out a negative 5. And I'll be left with x plus 1. Now these two pieces are equal, and that's how I know I've done my factor by grouping in a very nice way, because that x plus 1 will factor out in itself and I'm left with x plus 1 times 3x minus 5 equals 0. Don't forget to solve the equation. X plus 1 equals 0. 3x minus 5 equals 0. X equals negative 1. X equals positive 5/3. And these are my x-intercepts. 5/3, comma, 0. So when you need to solve a quadratic equation, you can either factor or use the quadratic formula. In part B, I will give you a small hint. If I multiply 7 times 4, I get 28. Now, is there any way that the factors of 28 can add together to get a negative 1x? That answer is no. And so this thing does not factor. It is a prime trinomial. If that happens, we now have to use the quadratic formula. So let's erase some of this. And I encourage you to now pause the video one more time and see if you can solve part B using the quadratic formula. All right, here we go. X is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2 times a. And that will become positive 1 plus or minus the square root of 1 plus 112 divided by 14. And that's going to be 1 plus or minus square root 113 over 14. When you get to this point, that radical does not simplify. So we can actually just leave this as our answer because this is in simplest radical form. So x is equal to 1 plus or minus the square root of 113 over 14. And there are two different answers there, a plus side and a minus side. That is how we go about solving quadratic equations, finding x-intercepts, and the vertex. Please comment on this video in order to earn credit, and then have a nice day.